Good evening and welcome to Mental Health Matters After Hours with me, Dr Audrey Tang. My co-host is Judith Crosier, and in the evening show, we discuss all things mental health and well-being. For Workplace Wellbeing, do tune in at 8 a.m. PT for Mental Health Matters Office Hours, where we focus specifically on workplace issues. But tonight, we have previously highlighted the importance of taking a culturally sensitive approach when it comes to healing. And that's exactly what our guest, Frederick, does. So let's head over to the main studio. Chris, welcome to the studio. It's so great to have you here. And I can't wait to hear about your own professional journey, which is fascinating. So please jump in and talk to us about how you've come to be where you are today.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. And, looking back at my my life, I mean, I'm 55 now, so I've got a lot more years behind me than I have ahead of me. But my journey basically started in the corporate world. So as you know, I'm a Star Wars fan, so 30 years ago in a galaxy far, far away, in global recruitment and business development. So that took me all over the world, specifically to Asia for 20 years. But I reached a major personal mental health crisis towards the end of 2018. And at that moment, everything changed for me. I went from managing sales targets to managing my own survival. And if you ask me today, which one is more difficult? Tough one to answer, to be honest, because managing sales targets are pretty hard. But managing my own survival has been I guess it's been an experience of rewiring my purpose. And I didn't, people say that when you get to sort of over 50, approaching 60, it's not easy to change. You're usually cemented in your own sort of roots and processes. But that change in direction basically rewired everything. And now I use my lived experience to influence mental health research, policy and practice, particularly focused in the suicide prevention field for Black communities, which is an area, sort of subsector of the mental health space, which hasn't really had too much attention. Yeah.
Yes. Very much so. And this is why we're so grateful to have you on the show, because your experience, and this does include your experience of living in Asia, living around the world, you will have noted similarities and differences in how other countries both experience and work with mental health. Do you mind sharing some of those differences and the importance of that cultural sensitivity to each of those subsections, each of those groups?
Absolutely. I mean, you won't be surprised to hear that the differences aren't too much. I mean, certainly stigma, systems breakdowns, fragmentation, lack of cultural awareness. I mean, they are commonplace all over the world. But I mean, I lived in Hong Kong, Singapore, and mainland China, and they're all quite different in some respects. And you must remember that I moved there in 2000, and I guess at that time still, mental health and suicide prevention wasn't really talked about, too much, even on a global scale. But certainly the pandemic has shifted that. We all recognize that, and I think one could argue that's probably one of the few plus points that have actually come from the pandemic, is that it's raised the global dialogue on mental health, and then therefore suicide prevention. I will give you one example that I think will frame it for you quite well, Audrey. So in 2018, when I attempted suicide for the first time, I was in Singapore. If I caught the bus and traveled about an hour and a half across the border to Malaysia, and attempted it there in Malaysia, it would have been considered a criminal act, and I would probably have been put in prison. And I didn't know that until many years later. And it also helped me to realize just how many countries around the world are still behind in terms of decriminalization of suicide. And that was a kind of really sort of evident thing for me in my early advocacy journey. But what's universal is silence. I mean, especially among men, no surprise. I mean, I lived in the corporate world. It was sales. There was a lot of pressure, a lot of redundancies, a lot of people missing targets. And I think if you spoke to those guys now, with the veil being lifted, a lot more men, particularly in sales, would say, wow, that I'm so happy now I can talk about how that's impacted my mental health. But back then, it would have been drinking, it would have been partying, it would have been drugs. And I think that, you know, too often the system does say to men in particular, open up, tell us your problems. But what it doesn't do is doesn't catch you when you do open up.
Yes.
All right, and that's a kind of key thing there. Yeah.
Yes.
Very key thing.
Huge. That's huge. Yes.
It is. Can you tell us about Project Soul Stride?
Yeah, my baby. As you can see, my T-shirt here.
Yeah.
So, you know, what started as a 3-month project in the summer of 2018, thanks to my good friend ChatGPT, that helped me come up and construct what was going to be, you know, a 3-month project just to get my arse out of bed. I was at that time, I was in between my therapeutic sort of journey. I was feeling that I was slipping back into some very old bad habits, like not getting out of bed, not washing for a week, smoking too much, not answering phone calls from friends or responding to WhatsApp messages. So I was becoming a little bit distant. But what I realized, oh, hold on a minute, I'm repeating old patterns. I need to do something. So one morning I got up and I sat down with a blank sheet of paper and I said, okay, I need something that's going to keep me busy for 3 months. It's going to force me to pick up the phone or virtually meet people, because I spend 98% of the time on my own in one room. I live in a shared house of 7. So I suffer from chronic loneliness, social isolation. So that's one of the things that I also deal with. And so I wanted something that was going to force me to speak to people, that was also going to make use of all of my vast commercial skills, networking, you know, gaining referrals, talking to people, telling stories, attracting people to come talk to me. So I came up with this title, Project Soul Stride, and I was quite shocked, because very quickly, towards the end of that 3 months, something quite miraculous happened. A magic happened. Things started to snowball. And it was actually until I spoke to Andy Bell, who's the CEO of the Centre for Mental Health. He said to me, Chris, do you know that there's a research academic term that's called the snowball effect? And I actually said, you must be joking. He said, no, there is. And what you're doing is the snowball effect, because you've gathered so much momentum very quickly that people are wanting to introduce you and refer you to more and more people to speak to about this really interesting topic. And 30 calls grew to, wait for it, 180 people that I spoke to in a 15-month period. And that's me at my desk, in my bedroom, on my laptop, having half an hour, 1 hour calls with clinicians, members of the community, academics, policy members, and it was just quite amazing. And I ended up collating something like 150 pages of handwritten anecdotal notes and post-its and highlights and all that really cool stuff. And I didn't know what to do with it, because I knew I wasn't an academic. So I had to be careful not to position this work as an academic study, a body of research. And it was Dr. Kamlesh Bui at Oxford, who's a real legend in this space. And he said to me, Chris, what you're doing is so revolutionary. You've basically broken all the rules. You've broken all the systems. I said, oh, I actually felt, I said, I apologize, because I didn't know that. He said, no, don't apologize. Use it as your weapon. And from today, treat this exercise, treat this work as if you were an investigative journalist conducting market research on the mental health and suicide prevention marketplace. And if you position it like that, not only will it take the pressure off you in terms of getting all the jargon right and figuring out, you know, what I need to do with the outputs. He said, you can do what you want with it. You can run podcasts like this. You can do keynote speaking. You can write. You can do guest blogs. You can basically be creative. And he said, that's what the industry has been missing for so many years. And I was so happy that he said that, because that's exactly what has happened. It's opened up the floodgates. And now I've turned quote unquote research facts into storytelling, advocating, and building a legacy model of suicide prevention that's basically rooted in culture, truth, and hope. And it's only been, in fact, August 15th this year will be the second year anniversary of Project Soul Stride. So watch out, because there's going to be a whole campaign going out on LinkedIn to celebrate what I've been up to.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I think what you're doing is, and what Project Soul Stride is doing, if I'm right, is it is taking what's very dry and academic, and has always been dry and academic in the past, and actually hearing the real voices who are experiencing all of these things, and presenting that as another, I guess, voice in the same arena. And I think we always need that. We always need that. We don't do that enough. That's beautiful.
Really important research.
Yes.
Research material that you've gained as well.
Mm-hmm.
That is really great. So why is it important for us to understand the cultural nuances with any mental health interventions?
Great question. I mean, firstly, if we all recognize that culture shapes how we grieve, how we cope, and most importantly for men, how we ask for help.
Yes.
Okay. And a one-size-fits-all model ignores the very things that make us all unique, right?
Yes.
The things that keep us safe, that prevent us from going over the edge. That's the essence of appreciating and respecting cultural nuances. And if any intervention doesn't speak our language, literally or metaphorically, it's missing the mark.
Yes.
Quite honestly. I mean, I there's one organization, and I always think about this, because we try to sort of find solutions from North America, maybe from Australia, from within the UK, but actually what we failed to do is recognize that the beautiful interventions come from the countries that have little or no real resources, and they have to rely on those people from within their community to help themselves. So we talk about low middle income countries, right? LMICs. So one specific location I always love talking about is Zimbabwe. And the beautiful intervention, if you've not heard of it, called the Friendship Bench Zimbabwe. And what Dr. Dixon Chibanda has done is that he's taken a group of grandmas from within the community with a very small budget. From a psychiatric perspective, he's taught them the basic skills in how to provide empathetic listening to somebody who's struggling with some form of mental ill health. And by sitting on a bench over 6 sessions, you talk to this grandma and you get to flesh out the issues that you're facing. And at that point, if the grandma and you agree, you then get signposted to a primary care specialist. And they've now trained well over 3,500 grandmas in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
No surprise, it's going global. Dixon travels all over the world. Sierra Leone have just opened up, and this will make you smile, because it makes me smile, makes my heart sing. A Catholic church in Sierra Leone training the Catholic nuns and using the benches around the grounds of the church to provide the Friendship Bench service to local people within Sierra Leone. What a beautiful adaptation of an intervention.
Yeah.
And, we're working on trying to bring that concept to the UK, and it's beginning to happen very slowly. So watch this space,
Do you know what I love about that is the benches, because we come from teaching backgrounds. We're always told if you have to have a tricky conversation with a student, do it side by side, not face to face. And that's what kind of really brings. I picture that when you talk about it. I just think it's fantastic.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
It is. And Chris, you're staying with us.
Yes.
We'll be back just after this.
I actually wrote this book for the purpose of disconnecting the trauma bond, because we need to shift the focus, and we can't shift the focus by talking about it. We actually need practical tools to move this forward. And this book is actually filled with over 50 little exercises. It's a little bit like a buffet where you can try out, and you like it, you put it in your toolbox. It's all about building your own toolbox, and it's designed to help you shift your focus away from them and what has happened and onto yourself and your healing and finding back to you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Constance Leland, the host of Level Up Circle, where I elevate the world through education, one learner at a time. Join me on Fresh Takes, Thursdays at 9 a.m. PST, right here on E360 TV.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters After Hours. We are taking a culturally sensitive approach to healing, and we have Chris Frederick with us, who is the founder of Project Soul Stride, which has been looking at the voices from experience, from lived experience of people who have experienced suicidal ideation, suicidal action and recovery, and all of the elements surrounding that. And we're hearing from the ground what the experiences are, not what academics think they should be. And I think that's really important. Chris, do you mind us diving deeper into your own mental health experiences? What societal or systematic elements impacted you at the time? Because I know a lot of your work is there to challenge some of those beliefs and thoughts of this works and we must stick with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think based on the fact that, I was born in the 70s, my parents were part of the Windrush generation, so they both migrated over with their uncles and aunts to London from the Caribbean. And, I think that they themselves were masking some form of pain because there was a lot of racism going on, particularly during the 60s. And that, I know that sort of generational passing on of that pain definitely got passed on to me, and many would agree from my age group. And I think that and this is where I being so honest with you both, I'd been running away from this all my life. I knew that there were issues. I'm a twin, and what I had to face was I couldn't see the pain from my twin, but I could recognize it in myself. So I thought maybe it was just me. Maybe I'm the one that's got the problem. Nobody else is to blame. So for years, I've been masking a lot of pain. I decided to move from the UK to Asia, spent 20 years out there. Again, I was running away. Yeah. And what made it worse was that when I started to really experience these challenges and started to try and identify services, there was a lot of sense of invisibility, long waiting times, lack of cultural awareness. I got so used to hearing the word no. For example, can I see a black therapist, please? Unfortunately, Mr. Frederick, we don't have any available. Oh, you must do. Unfortunately, no. If you insist, you may have to wait a year as opposed to 6 to 8 weeks. So you get used to hearing the word no so many times that as somebody in receipt of services, you end up being dictated to for the very thing that you think you need. So that all of that made me feel just like a case file, and not a human being. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I love therapy, it's helped me, no doubt, but I hate being treated like a case file, measured by percentages and checkbox lists and so on and so forth. I'm a human being, and I need you to get to know me and understand me before you can help me.
Yeah. Oh gosh, absolutely. And I don't think people recognise how difficult it can be when you're asking for, I need a therapist who understands my culture. And it is sometimes as simple as that. What is Project Soul Stride doing to push that advocacy through? Because I think that is so important.
Absolutely. Well, I think the first thing is I'm not waiting to be asked anymore. I'm dictating the terms, and I think I know it might sound a bit bullish, but I think because I don't come from the sector, I think because I come from the private sector, and I'm used to hearing the word no. I was in sales. I was very pushy. I was very demanding, and I could always do it with a cheeky smile. So I would often get away with murder. My mum will tell you, and my friends would testify to that as well. So I'm using all of that. I'm summoning all of that experience to put lived experience front and center, to make sure that myself and others like me have got a seat at the table. And when I mean that, because it's an overused term, but I mean that not just accepting the invitation to speak, but insisting that we help steer the conversation and help shape the systems that are there to serve us. Exactly. And as a result, in just 18 months, 24 months or so, one of the things that's happened is that I've started to be invited to sit on some different advisory groups, and now I've got a prominent place in a multiple range of advisory boards and national panels like Thrive London's Suicide Prevention Group and the newly formed PMHC, which is the Public Mental Health Consortium, which is a full national body with some very strong participants and organisations, including academics, but a very strong and willing team of lived experience advisors. So now I've created this platform, I'm building it, I'm challenging tokenism, and I'm championing community-led change from the jump. Fantastic. And I'm not waiting to be asked anymore. I'm insisting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Amazing. But do you know what's so interesting? Just watching you, and I'm not analysing you, I promise. But what you've got in a mix in yourself, if you don't mind me saying, is I can see that sales drive, I can see the business drive, but in that I can also see the little boy almost saying, I need help and I don't know who to ask, and when I ask I'm going to get knocked back. And we all hold that in ourselves. We have this almost professional capability, but then there'll be something, whether it's triggered by culture or whether it's triggered by just being told no by authority figures. The most strong kind of professional can retreat straight back into, I don't deserve to be here. And I just think that balance is there, but you've really overcome that thing that held you back, which is just beautiful. So
exactly. And what you're describing there is imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah. Well, right? Yes. Literally, we've just recorded a show on that. Right. Literally. Now, Chris, that leads me on to my next question, which is, it's hard enough for men to speak up anyway, because as you say, it's how it's received, even if they do speak up in the first place. But there are other issues that surround black men when it comes to speaking up about mental health. What don't we know about what is holding the black man back from speaking up?
So touching on what I said earlier about those historical generational traumas that get sort of passed on through the years, I think that in itself has led to black men almost becoming conditioned. It's like mental conditioning through the generations to be strong, to be silent, and to be stoic, right? We've always been, I look at my father, who was a beautiful man, and he if you looked at a picture of him and Muhammad Ali, they could almost be brothers, and he had beautiful green eyes, but he was always such a proud, strong man. And the only time I would ever see him experiencing pain or failure was when he had a bottle of whiskey in his hand and he was drinking, but he himself was unable to demonstrate, how do I talk to people about the challenges and pressures that he himself faced as a young father? And I think that also attributes to that silence. The silence is the thing that's hurting us.
Yes.
Only just recently I joined a working group that prepared a report for CQC on the experience of black men in mental health. And would you believe, for the very first time on the screen, I wasn't the only black man. There were 10 others who looked and sounded like me, and the research was being run by two wonderful white ladies, because let's face it, most of the researchers are white. There was one black researcher who was there to help sort of supervise the group, and the work and the bond and the respect that was shown over these 6 weeks that we came together was quite extraordinary. And I've been searching for this for a long time to, you know, showcase what would be a great case study, and finally I found it. You know, there's always deep distrust, there's always systemic racism, there's over policing, there's cultural disconnect. But when you are in an opportunity to work alongside other men just like you, that's where the magic really happens.
And you can see that kind of radiating out of you as well. It's really lovely to watch and listen to you talk about that. So you're talking about systemic changes. What changes have you seen through your years of advocacy? And what are the sticking points that still need better understanding?
Let me start off with the sticking points before I hit you with, I think, some really good stuff that's going on. And let's not mistake the issue here. There are some wonderful things going on, which I'm going to share with you in one moment. But the sticking points are still quite straightforward. I still feel that we're navigating a tick box culture.
Oh, yes.
Okay, very much was, and I think that until all organizations, those that hold the budgets, that have the accessibility to policymakers, they must be prepared to shift from what I call performative allyship, of which most are fantastic, to real partnership.
Yep.
Okay, if we can start to showcase examples of that happening, I think we can achieve some of the wonderful things we aspire to achieve. And great examples. One of my favorite black charities, run by a lovely lady, Danielle Bridge. You may know of this organization called Black Minds Matter UK, and they provide free therapeutic services for black therapists to black service users. I myself have been a service user through Black Minds Matter, and I can tell you that in the 52 hours of therapy I've had over the last 3.5 years, those 10 hours shifted the dial significantly to where I am today. And thank God for Black Minds Matter. Just yesterday in Parliament, there was an oral evidence session on community mental health services. Black Minds Matter were there giving oral evidence, and also another lovely CIC called Coffee Afrique. I know these organisations very well. I've endorsed them when I gave evidence in Parliament back in February. So that's happening. Other movements like the Black Mental Health Manifesto, which was launched last year, and I'm a member of that group of individuals and organisations that are striving to make change. And then I think one of the most significant impacts has been the introduction of PCREF, which came on September 11th, 23. PCREF, for those who don't know, stands for the Patient Carer Race Equality Framework, and it's for the first time. It took 10 years, but for the first time, a real system change policy that's forcing all NHS mental health trusts to show to the CQC all evidence, all dashboard data on how they are improving race equality when it comes to mental health, delivery of mental health services. And that could be a major game changer.
Yes. Definitely.
Brilliant. Utterly brilliant.
Fantastic. So in terms of your own success stories, can you share any of those with us?
You know, the first one is just getting my arse out of bed.
Yes,
I mean, I consider consider that to be a real achievement, because some days it's not easy. But I remember when I made the Finding Help film with Mind last April. It was launched on YouTube. And first time I'd been in front of the camera talking about this stuff, and in what was just over a 3-minute film, has now been watched nearly 1,700 times on YouTube. And I'm so proud that we just celebrated the first year anniversary of the launch of that film, because that tells me that there's 1,700 individuals who have had a chance to see themselves there in me, and to say, oh, you know what, this guy's so brave, he's telling us what he's been through, he's telling us what he's doing to get over depression, and now I'm going to take a leaf out of his book. And one young man had sent me a message through social media after he watched that film and simply said, thank you so much for the story that you've told. I've just now finally booked my first therapy session.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you, you know what we always say when you're in this work, if you can help just one person, it was worth it. Well, that was one beautiful story. Other people from NHS have said they've adapted their suicide prevention protocol after working with me in some of their workshops. These and other small successes remind me that change starts with a connection. It starts with a conversation, and that's why I do so much writing, speaking, and public-facing work. If you had approached me a year and a half ago and asked me to do this podcast, I would have said no, I wasn't ready. I was too afraid. But in that time, I've now been able to, grow in confidence and feel inspired to share this journey with you and the listeners.
And what's beautiful, and thank you for that honesty as well. What's beautiful is this is authentic confidence, and there's a real difference between the confidence we project in a professional role and when we can genuinely stand up and go, no, this is what I care about and what I'm passionate about. We're keeping you, Crystal. We'll be back just after this.
Our passion for coffee goes way beyond the cup. We believe in a fair production chain in which each coffee farmer plays an essential role. We are proud to support our communities and promote environmental sustainability. Bedford Coffee Roasters guarantees an exceptional experience for producers and consumers. Join us on our journey to extraordinary coffee, where quality, sustainability and fairness come together to create an experience unlike any other. Ground with passion, served with pride. Bedford Coffee Roasters, coffee worth drinking.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We are having a really inspiring conversation with Chris Frederick. He is the founder of Project Soul Stride, which is advocating for changes in suicide prevention to make it more culturally aware and culturally sensitive. And if you've just tuned in, please just rewind back, because you don't want to miss what this man is saying and his own journey, which has advised so much of his work from that real authentic perspective. Sorry, I've just jumped in. I don't know, Jude's got the question here.
That's absolutely fine. We were wondering, so for yourself, what keeps your mental well-being in check? And can you give us any tips from your own practice, what you do to help yourself?
This is the question that I dread.
Oh, sorry.
No. I tell you why. Because, and this might sound so ridiculous, but you're speaking to a person who sounds and is behaving like I'm really on top of things and I'm really getting things in order. But I have to be honest with you, and I think that's the beauty of this conversation, is that this is the one chink in my armor. There are still, I would say, so much more of my time is spent doing lazy things, lying on my bed, watching TV, not going out for walks, not eating properly. And, I would say that I still need to improve massively in this area. But if I'm forced to give you things that really do help me, music, I think, is my go-to. I'm an old soul boy from the 70s, right? So I grew up with, the R&B music. So when I'm typing, working, etc., I've always got my headset on. I'm always listening and grooving away at my desk to music, because that really lifts my spirits. I try to walk as much as I can, but not enough. And one subject that few people actually do address is the side effects of the medication that we who suffer mental ill health takes. So, you know, you take your antidepressants, you take your anti-anxiety tablets, but side effects is weight gain and also increases your heart rate and blood pressure. So what do? I have medication for high blood pressure and my heart rate. And so all of these meds every day have affected my physical health, which means that I'm not as upwardly mobile as I should be. But what I will say is this summer, I'm doing something that I've never done before. I'm switching off all social media for 2 months.
Wow.
So from July 1st to September 1st, I will have no access to any social media, and I will be focusing on learning and development courses and walking every day, and reading books in the park. I've set myself some really good fun goals. I'm going to take my laptop to the local library. So if I'm going to be sat in front of the laptop, just get out of the house, Chris. Go to the library. You never know, you might make a new friend, right? So those 60 days are going to be really interesting for me because I live on social media because I live on my own, right?
Yes.
So switching that off is not going to be easy, but after that, when I come back, I hope to be refreshed. I hope to be a few kilos lighter, and we shall wait and see. And I think the last thing I would add to that tip is the Wim Hof cold shower treatment. So, you know, just this morning, getting ready to speak to you lovely ladies, I had a lovely shave here. You can see my head is beaming, and I had a shave this morning. And at the end of the shower, I turned it down to 0 and stood there for 60 seconds in a freezing cold.
Oh, wow.
And God, that really does make a difference. The Wim Hof shower treatment. Yeah.
Some excellent tips there, and it'd be interesting to see how the 2 months without social media.
We'll get you back on.
Yeah,
We'd
love to know.
Yes.
Actually, thank you for that. You were really honest there. Thank you very much. Can you tell us about your nickname, Mental Health Jedi?
Oh, finally. Finally, we've got there. MHJ. We've got to MHJ, right? So I was speaking to a novelist, a writer last year. We were discussing some ideas about a book I'm thinking of writing. And when I was going through my background, and this individual had done some research on me and understood a little bit about my story, and they also picked up on the fact that I run, and Audrey, you'll know this, I run the LinkedIn Star Wars fans group, which is has become my escape route, right? And so over the years, I've realized just the impact that Star Wars has had on my life. And I'd go as far as to say it has saved my life. And some people say, this sounds ridiculous, Chris. Are you serious? I say, yeah. And let me tell you why. Because it's given me so many metaphors for healing, struggling, and resistance, and resilience. So MHJ, the Mental Health Jedi, has now become my alter ego. And what he does is he fights stigma with storytelling, and he uses the force or empathy to connect.
Yes.
Yeah. And I like to say to people, I don't just talk recovery, I live it with my lightsaber.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. But also when you talk about recovery, you're really honest with that.
Yeah.
And I think that self-awareness is something that we don't get from academics very much because they're very afraid of being vulnerable. And I think your honesty in saying, do you know what, sometimes I do just sit on the couch and it's everything I can do to get out of bed.
Yeah.
I think anyone who has ever experienced depression or anything like that will connect with that straight away.
Definitely.
And know that you know how much of an effort it is to show up. And I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
Chris, I love the fact you talk about Star Wars, and I use cultural references a lot. I've done lessons from Watership Down, lessons from Game of Thrones, lessons from Star Wars. But with regards to that, why is it that those cultural references that we all know, whether it's a film or a book or something, why are they so useful at sometimes just getting into the depth of what people need to hear?
It's a great question. I mean, I think for me, pop culture references have helped me to create what I call emotional shortcuts. So when I speak to somebody, whether it's a friend or a stranger, or I'm talking at an event, when I reference Star Wars, people immediately switch on. There's a curiosity, and let me qualify that. When I spoke at Parliament, this is in Parliament, House of Commons, yeah. And there are 14 MPs there, and I'm on a panel of 3 lived experience advisors giving oral evidence. And when it came to my turn to introduce myself, I went through my usual, good morning, my name's Frederick. I'm a twice suicide attempt survivor. I'm a lived experience advisor now and a global citizen. But also, I'm a massive Star Wars fan. And would you believe, at that moment, the chair of the committee said, "That's brilliant, Chris. We've got that in common now. I also love Star Wars." And how many other people, how many other MPs looked at each other, smiled, and then started to really acknowledge my story and really connect with me on a personal level.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can say to people, I'm in the dark side. The dark side is depression, or your trauma is not your destiny.
Yeah.
People get it.
Yeah.
People get it, right? So what I think we need, and we've touched on it today, but I think what we need is we need more creative tools to help people open up. It's not just about children and cartoons, because I love cartoons, especially The Simpsons and so on and so forth. That's stupid humor. But for men and youths, if we can get creative tools helping them with storytelling, that becomes the bridge to connect the world. And I think that's what I'm learning through all this beautiful work, through Mental Health Jedi, Star Wars references. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I fully support that, and fully. 'Cause I've seen it work in practice,
Yes,
because
me
it
too.
is. Reading something or watching something on television and having a conversation about it, it is like the proverbial, I'm asking for a friend. It's did you see Game of Thrones last night? Did you see when that happens? What do you think of that? And you get that conversation going. Chris, we could talk to you all day, but we're out of time. Where can we learn more about you, follow you, talk to you on LinkedIn and so on?
Yeah, so definitely, if you just Google Chris Frederick Mental Health Jedi, you're going to get a ton of content, right? If you're on LinkedIn, just put Chris Frederick Mental Health Jedi in there. You'll find me. You can connect with me, follow me. You can then connect with my Project Soulstride LinkedIn page. I've also just launched the Ripple Report, which is a newsletter that comes out monthly. I've got a huge array of speaking content on YouTube, blogs, guest blogs, articles that I've done. It's all very authentic. I hope you've got that today. It's very public facing. It's full of passion. It's purpose led. Come and say hi. Come and connect, share your story, and let's try and make the world a better place.
Chris, amazing. I wish we could clone you.
I know. I was thinking that.
Lots of stormtroopers. I love it. I absolutely love it. Seriously. Thank you so much. You join us again after you've done your detox. We'd love to hear all about it. So do come back on the show.
Thank you so much.
Let's head over to Test the Trend. I thought I would pull out something that our guest has been talking about, and that is taking lessons from fiction or films. And in my own work, I've done a lot of those articles of 10 things that we can learn from Star Wars or 10 things we can learn from Game of Thrones. And because Star Wars was the topic, I thought I'd give you a few tips that we could take from the Star Wars movies. And these are quotes. The first quote is, "Good is a point of view." And actually, what we take from that is praise is a human need. We need to know we are recognised, and therefore it's important to voice praise when people have done things well. I do a little escape room session where I talk first of all about teamwork and what makes a good team, and everybody says praise. Everybody says praise. You put people under pressure trying to solve the puzzles in under an hour, and suddenly people solve puzzles, there's no praise. And then you ask people to reflect on that, and they suddenly think, oh gosh, yes, I thought I'd said well done, but actually I was so focused on winning or so focused on getting to the next puzzle. So remember, praise is important. Next quote. "You have done that to yourself." Now, these quotes can pretty much come from most films, but In this particular case, this was referring to Anakin's move to the dark side, which was motivated by love. Sometimes good people do bad things for good reasons. However, that doesn't make the bad thing okay. And I think that is important to recognise. Even if your motivation is, I want to say pure, kind, supportive, helpful, if it hurts somebody else, that can still be a problem. So please be aware of that. Mitigating circumstances are a thing in British law, but just be aware of that. Deceive you, your eyes can. That's a Yoda-ism. Make decisions based on evidence over tradition. And this is where the Jedi Council was unable to sense the presence of the Sith, who was disguised, because they didn't pay attention, because they thought the Sith was no longer in existence. And so sometimes we can think, oh, well, we've always done it that way, and that's why we're going to carry on doing it. But if we don't become more mindful over why we're doing it, some of those traditions can lead us awry. I think a personal example I have there is there was always a tradition of going to my in-laws' house for Christmas, until one day my husband and I broke tradition and said, well, we're going away. That day, everybody said, oh my goodness, I'm so relieved, because they all wanted to do their own things. So sometimes we stick to tradition without thinking about it. I did not put you in this situation. Now, this is where we cannot control the outcome of a decision or a situation. What may not be of your making may still end up your problem. So again, every time we are going to take an action, be mindful. How will my actions impact others? So those are just some of the reflections when it comes to the concepts in Star Wars. But there are many other films which can do the same thing. So perhaps this week, if you find yourself watching a film and reflecting on it, see what you can learn. Welcome to the last part of Mental Health Matters After Hours. What an uplifting conversation.
So uplifting. Oh. Honestly, Chris's energy just comes out, and his empathy and own experiences, just amazing.
Everything feeds in together, and it's so important. It's important to have advocates who can do that, and I think that's quite an unusual blend, because you either get the very academic or the only lived experience. But what he's done in his project Soul Stride, he's collated so many voices that when he speaks for the community.
He does, and he said a couple of times, I'm not an academic, but you wouldn't know it. Really, he's such a brilliant advocate for what he does. Honestly, great guy.
And the funny thing is, when we talk about the Oxford scholar saying you've broken all the rules, the only rule he's broken is he hasn't asked for ethical permission. But really, honestly,
exactly. He's gone with his gut, and he's gone with his heart, and he's just done it all. And what he's come up with is just fantastic.
And when we talk about ethics and things like that, it is just simply to say to people, I'm asking you these questions, you don't need to answer them, we can remove your data. That's literally what it is, and I'll guarantee you he will have been doing that anyway.
He will have done that anyway, exactly. Just naturally.
Yes. And I think there is a lot to be said for listening to the community and advocating for the community. You don't need to process it all through an academic paper in order to do that. And effectively, that's only what academics do anyway. They just do it under controlled conditions.
Exactly. And, where he's taken it to UK Parliament, etc.
That's what we need.
Exactly.
Whereas the academics will sit in the book and that's it. Yes. And that becomes a doorstop. I know, my thesis is there. So, what have we taken? So many things, but what are the key things that stood out for you?
I think the authenticity, so being honest with yourself and saying, okay, yes, I'm ignoring phone calls from my friends. I'm not going out the front door for 4 days on end. Acknowledging that and then doing something about it. And, Chris is something which he thought was going to be quite small about it. It's turned into this huge thing, but it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It can just be just opening the window and listening to the birds, maybe.
Absolutely.
That's where you start.
I think that's beautiful. And also, it was still related to that for me. It was when he said, so I take this for depression, I take this for anxiety, and then I take that for heart, and then that's what happens with medication. And that's it, just in practical terms. people are managing so much, as well as the psychological condition on top of that. And I think we need to be mindful of this, how different medications can then affect us physiologically, and how we then need to medicate for that as well, and what effects those things are going to have too. And that's a lot to manage.
Yeah. Exactly right. And then the physical effects of the medication have on mentally, and it becomes a whole vicious circle.
Yeah. And whilst it's very easy to say, oh, why does everybody need medication? So I'm not you need to go on medication, the end. I prefer talking therapies. I prefer to non-medicate to start with. But in many cases, you actually need the medication to function.
You do.
Engage with talking therapies, let alone, develop and grow from it. So, it's not an anti-medication, but just be aware of all of the different effects, exactly as Chris explained.
Yeah, exactly.
So, do get in touch with him.
Yes.
I think he's a great person. We look forward to having him on again.
Yeah, definitely.
And from Judith and myself and the team, have a good night.